The ambulance doors flew open at 2:47 a.m., and the paramedics hurried in with a gurney. It was carrying what looked like a pile of rags until I saw the small, pale face peeking out from under the dirty blankets. The girl couldn't have been more than 11 or 12 years old. Her lips had a bluish tint, and her breathing was shallow and fast. "I'm Dr. Anna Hayes, and I've been working the night shift at City General Hospital for 6 years now, ever since I left my old life behind. I had seen countless homeless patients come through these doors, but something about this child made my stomach clench in a way I couldn't quite place." The lead paramedic, Diaz, quickly listed off her vitals as they wheeled her into Trauma Bay 3. "Found her collapsed behind a restaurant on Mercer. Temp is 104.3. BP is 85/50. Respiratory rate is 32 and shallow. She's been drifting in and out of consciousness. No ID, no family." I pulled on my gloves and moved to the girl's side, my trained eyes already assessing her. She was severely dehydrated, obviously malnourished, and the rattling sound in her chest pointed to pneumonia, which was likely complicated by sepsis. The child's face was gaunt, her cheekbones too sharp beneath skin that looked almost paper-thin in the harsh fluorescent lights. Her clothes were nothing more than rags, just layers of torn shirts and a jacket that looked like it had been pulled from a donation bin. But it was her hands that caught my eye. They were small, with dirt caked under the nails, but the fingers were long and slender. They were hands that should have been holding school books or playing an instrument, not digging through garbage for something to eat. My team moved with practiced efficiency around the small body on the gurney. Nurse Clara Ramirez started an IV line, while the resident, Dr. Ben Carter, began cutting away the girl's filthy clothing to attach the monitoring equipment. I leaned over the child, using my stethoscope to listen to her lungs, and what I heard made my jaw clench. There was fluid in both lungs, with crackling sounds that meant a severe infection. This girl was in critical condition. From the look of her thin frame, she had been sick for days, maybe even weeks, without any medical attention. "Let's get a chest X-ray, a full blood panel, and start her on broad-spectrum antibiotics," I ordered, my voice calm despite the urgency I felt. "I want cultures for everything, and get respiratory therapy down here now." As I worked, I found myself studying the girl's face. Even unconscious and sick, there was something striking about her features, something that tugged at a memory I couldn't quite grasp. She had dark hair, matted and dirty, but I could tell it had once been thick. Her bone structure was delicate, and there was a small old scar just above her left eyebrow. I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on the medical emergency, not the strange sense of familiarity that made no sense at all. The monitors beeped as my team worked to stabilize her. Clara got the IV line in on the first try, and fluids began flowing into the child's body. Ben was drawing blood for the lab, filling vial after vial. I adjusted the oxygen mask on her face, making sure it was secure against her fragile skin. "X-rays here," called out the tech, wheeling in the portable machine. I stepped back to let him work, watching as he positioned the equipment over her chest. The image that appeared on the screen moments later confirmed my worst fears. Both lungs showed significant infiltrates, white clouds of infection that had spread everywhere. This wasn't just pneumonia. This was a severe, life-threatening infection that had been ignored for far too long. "My God," Ben muttered, staring at the X-ray. "How long has she been sick?" I shook my head. Days, maybe a week or more. Living on the streets, no access to care, probably trying to push through it until she couldn't anymore. I felt a hot flash of anger in my chest. Anger at a system that lets children fall through the cracks, that lets them get this sick before anyone even notices. The girl suddenly stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she looked confused, her gaze darting around the trauma bay with growing panic. I immediately moved closer, keeping my voice gentle but firm. "Hey, sweetheart. It's okay. You're in a hospital. You're safe. We're trying to help you." But her breathing quickened, and her heart rate spiked on the monitor. She tried to sit up, fighting against the hands trying to help. "No, no, please!" she gasped, her voice hoarse and desperate. "Don't send me back there. Please don't make me go back." Her eyes were wild with a fear I recognized. I'd seen it before in people who had been through unimaginable trauma. I reached out slowly and placed my hand on her shoulder. "I promise you, no one here is going to hurt you. You're very sick, and we need to help you get better. Can you tell me your name?" Her breathing was rapid, but something in my voice seemed to cut through her panic. Her eyes focused on my face, studying me with an intensity that was unsettling. Then her gaze dropped lower to my arms, where I'd rolled up my sleeves to work. Everything changed in that instant. Her expression shifted, her eyes widening as she stared at my left forearm. I glanced down, and my stomach dropped. There, just visible under the harsh lights, was the small tattoo I'd gotten 12 years ago. A lifetime ago. In a world I had completely left behind. It was barely 2 inches across, just simple black ink. But to those who knew what it meant, it was everything. It was the insignia of the special warfare unit I had been a part of. I had been so careful over the years to keep it covered, wearing long sleeves even in the summer, making sure no one at the hospital ever saw it. I'd left that life behind 8 years ago, walked away from that whole world and everything it represented, and I'd never looked back, or at least I'd tried not to. But now this dying child was staring at the tattoo like she'd seen a ghost. Her cracked lips moved, forming words I couldn't quite hear over the noise of the ER. I leaned closer, my heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with the medical crisis. "What did you say, sweetheart?" I asked softly. The girl's hand reached out, trembling, and her fingers brushed against the tattoo on my arm. Her touch was light, almost reverent, and when she spoke again, her voice was clearer, stronger, despite her illness. "Are you one of them?" she whispered. The trauma bay seemed to freeze. I was vaguely aware that my team was still working, still calling out vitals, but all I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. All I could see was this child's face, looking up at me with eyes that suddenly seemed far too knowing. "My mom had that tattoo," she continued, her voice barely audible, but each word landed like a blow to my chest. "She showed it to me when I was little. She said it meant she was a protector. She said only the bravest people in the world earned that mark." The girl's eyes were starting to glaze over again, the fever pulling her back under, but she kept talking. "She said it meant you never leave anyone behind. She said it meant you were part of something bigger." And then her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed against the gurney. Unconscious once more. I was left standing there, my hand still on her shoulder, my mind reeling, my carefully constructed walls crumbling. My hands moved on autopilot, checking the girl's pulse, adjusting the oxygen mask, calling out orders to my team. But my mind was somewhere else. In the 8 years since I'd left the military, since I'd walked away from that life, I'd never once spoken about my service to anyone at this hospital. I'd buried that part of myself deep, locked it away behind the white coat and the stethoscope. The tattoo was small, discreet, and I'd been so careful. How had this child recognized it? How did she even know what it meant? That insignia wasn't exactly common knowledge, especially not among homeless kids in Seattle. And the girl had said her mother had the same tattoo. My throat tightened as I processed that. There had only been a handful of women who'd made it through the selection training and earned that insignia during my time in the service. I had been one of the very first women to ever earn that mark. I'd known every single woman who'd gone through the program in those early years. We were a small, tight-knit group, sisters in arms. The girl's monitor started alarming, pulling me back to the immediate crisis. Her blood pressure was dropping, her oxygen saturation falling despite the mask. "She's going into septic shock," Ben said, his voice tight with concern. "Dr. Hayes, we need to intubate. She can't maintain her airway." I nodded, my training overriding the emotional chaos. "Get me the intubation kit, Clara. Push another liter of saline wide. Open and start a pressor drip. We need to support her blood pressure now." As I worked to secure the girl's airway, sliding the breathing tube down her throat with practiced precision, my mind kept circling back. My mom had that tattoo. Who was this child? And why did I feel like I was staring at a ghost from a past I'd tried so hard to forget? The girl's face, even slack with unconsciousness, seemed familiar. The shape of her jaw, the set of her eyes. I was certain I had seen those features before, but the memory just wouldn't come. By the time we'd stabilized the girl enough to transfer her to the pediatric intensive care unit, the sun was starting to rise over the city. I stood at the nurse's station, staring at the empty patient information form on my computer screen. Name? Unknown. Age? Approximately 11 to 13 years. Next of kin? None. The words seemed to mock me. My shift had technically ended an hour ago, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. The girl was upstairs in the PICU now, on a ventilator, fighting for her life. And I needed to know who she was and how she knew about that tattoo. Behind me, I heard the distinctive click of heels and turned to see Ms. Helen Shaw from Social Services approaching, her clipboard clutched to her chest. Ms. Shaw was in her mid-50s, all business, and utterly unmoved by the human drama in these halls. "Dr. Hayes," she said, her voice crisp, "I need to discuss the Jane Doe you brought in." I felt my jaw tighten. She has a name. We just don't know it yet. Ms. Shaw's expression didn't change. "Semantics, doctor. The point is, this child is now a ward of the state. Once she's medically stable, she'll be placed in emergency foster care while we attempt to locate family." Something fierce and protective flared in my chest, surprising me. I barely knew this girl, but the thought of her being shuffled into the foster system made my hands clench. "She's critically ill, Helen. She's on a ventilator with sepsis. She's not going anywhere for a long time." Ms. Shaw made a note on her clipboard. "Nevertheless, I need to follow protocol. Has she said anything that might help us identify her? Any information about family?" I hesitated, thinking about those whispered words. "Are you one of them?" My mom had that tattoo. I should tell her. It might help identify the girl, but something held me back. I made a decision, one that went against my professional instincts. I looked Ms. Shaw straight in the eye and lied. She was barely conscious when she came in. She didn't say anything coherent, just fever-induced delirium. Nothing that would help. Ms. Shaw's eyes narrowed slightly, but after a moment she just nodded. "Very well. I'll check back in 24 hours. In the meantime, I'll file the missing persons report." She turned to leave, then paused. "Dr. Hayes, you look exhausted. You should go home." But I couldn't leave. As soon as she disappeared, I headed for the elevators, riding up to the 4th floor where the PICU was located. The unit was quieter, with dimmed lights and the soft beeping of monitors. I found the girls' room, 412, and stood outside the glass window looking in. The child looked even smaller now, dwarfed by the hospital bed and machines. The ventilator breathed for her. IV lines ran into both arms. Her face had been cleaned, the dirt washed away to reveal pale skin and delicate features that made my chest ache with that recognition I still couldn't place. Dr. Emily Vale, the attending pediatric intensivist, came up beside me, her own face showing exhaustion. Emily was in her early 40s, with kind eyes and a reputation for being one of the best. "She's a fighter," Emily said softly, studying the monitors. Her labs came back. White blood cell count is through the roof, but her heart is strong and she's responding to the antibiotics. If we can get her through the next 48 hours, I think she has a real chance. I nodded, unable to take my eyes off the girl's face. "Has she woken up at all?" "No. We've got her sedated to keep her comfortable," Emily said. She paused, then continued in a lower voice. "Anna, I've been doing this for 20 years. This girl, there's something different about her. She's been living rough for months, maybe longer. But look at her teeth." I leaned closer. Emily was right. Despite everything, the girl's teeth were straight, well cared for. "She had orthodontic work," I said slowly. "Braces, probably." "Exactly," Emily confirmed. "And look at her hands. Those scars on her palms and fingers. They're not from living on the streets. They're older, healed. They look like rope burns, like she did a lot of climbing or rappelling at some point." My heart started pounding. Rope burns. Climbing. Those were injuries I'd seen before, in a very specific context, the kinds of scars you got from military training. My mind raced as I stared at the sleeping child. Rope burns, orthodontic work, and a mother who had been in the same Special Forces unit as me. The pieces were starting to form a picture that made my blood run cold. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I opened my contacts and scrolled through names I hadn't looked at in years. There was one person who might have answers. Major Kate Grant had been my mentor, my friend, and the closest thing to family I'd had during my years in the service. Kate had retired 3 years ago, but still had connections everywhere. I stepped away from the PICU window and found an empty conference room, closing the door before dialing. It rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered, rough with sleep. "This better be important, Hayes. It's 6:00 in the morning on a Saturday." Despite everything, I felt a small smile. "When did you start sleeping past 5, Major?" There was a pause. Then Kate's voice, fully alert. "Anna? My God, is that really you? It's been what, 3 years?" The smile faded. "I need your help, Kate. I need you to tell me about every female Special Forces soldier who's gone dark in the last 2 years, especially anyone with a daughter around 11 or 12 years old." The silence on the other end stretched out. Then Kate spoke, her voice careful. "Why are you asking me this, Anna? What's going on?" I looked through the conference room window toward the PICU. "I have a patient, a homeless kid who came into my ER this morning half dead. She recognized my tattoo, Kate. She told me her mother had the same one. She knew what it meant." Another long silence. Then Kate said something that made my world tilt. "Describe her. The girl. What does she look like?" I closed my eyes, picturing the child's face. Dark hair, dark eyes, maybe 5 feet tall, very thin from malnutrition. She has a small scar above her left eyebrow, and her hands show old rope burns. "Her name is Lily," Kate said, her voice tight with an emotion I'd rarely heard. "Lily Mason. And if she's in Seattle, then her mother is probably dead." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the conference table as Kate continued. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Mason. She was in the program 2 years after yours. One of the best operators I ever saw. Did 3 tours, 2 in Iraq, more classified missions than I can count. She was awarded the Silver Star for Valor. She was a hero, Anna. My throat was so tight I could barely speak. What happened to her? Kate's voice was heavy with grief. 18 months ago, her husband was killed in a training accident at the base. He was Special Forces too, part of another team. Jessica took emergency leave to deal with his death and take care of Lily. But something went wrong. She started showing signs of severe PTSD, depression. The Navy offered her help, counseling, but she refused it all, said she could handle it. I sank into one of the chairs. Kate, what happened? Where is Jessica now? I heard Kate moving, the sound of a door closing. 6 months after her husband died, Jessica disappeared. She took Lily and vanished. The Navy investigated, but it was complicated. She was on extended leave, so it wasn't technically desertion. She just left. But why? I demanded. Why run? Kate's sigh was heavy. Because she was drowning, Anna, and she didn't know how to ask for help. You remember what it was like. We were trained to be invincible, to never show weakness. Jessica took that to an extreme. After her husband died, she became paranoid, convinced that someone had killed him, that it wasn't an accident. She started investigating on her own, making accusations. I thought about Lily in that hospital bed. Don't send me back there. Kate, where do you think Jessica took Lily? There was a long pause. The last confirmed sighting of Jessica was in Portland, Oregon, about 4 months ago. A former teammate spotted her at a homeless shelter. She looked rough, Anna. Paranoid, malnourished. She had Lily with her. When he tried to approach them, Jessica ran. I felt sick. 4 months ago in Portland, and now Lily was here, alone. Do you think Jessica is still alive? Kate was quiet. Honestly, I don't know. If she was still alive and capable, she wouldn't have let Lily end up on the streets alone. Jessica loved that kid more than anything. If Lily's alone now, she didn't need to finish. I stood up, pacing. I need to find out what happened. Lily deserves to know. Kate's voice took on a warning tone. Anna, be careful. If Jessica was right, if there was something more to her husband's death, you could be walking into something dangerous. And even if she was just sick, there are people in the military who won't want this story getting out. A decorated officer losing her mind and ending up homeless? That's not good publicity. I don't give a damn about publicity, I snapped. I care about that little girl upstairs. Her mother was one of us, Kate. We don't leave people behind. Remember? I heard Kate's sharp intake of breath. You're right. What do you need from me? I looked out the window. Everything you have on Jessica Mason. Her service record, her husband's death investigation, any reports from the last 18 months. And I need it quietly, Kate. Just in case. 2 hours later, I sat in the doctor's lounge, my laptop open, reading through the encrypted files Kate had sent. The service record of Commander Jessica Mason was impressive and heartbreaking. Born in San Diego, she had joined the Navy at 18. She'd excelled, rising through the ranks, and then doing the unthinkable, volunteering for the selection program. The photos in her file showed a striking woman with dark hair and intense eyes. The same eyes I'd seen in Lily's face. Then I reached the file on Lieutenant David Mason, Jessica's husband. According to the official report, he'd died during a parachute jump when his main chute failed and his reserve tangled. The official conclusion was accidental death. But in the margins of the report, someone had made handwritten notes, and I recognized Jessica's handwriting. The notes were frantic. Chute inspected by WH. Weather report doesn't match my records. David never made user errors. The notes painted a picture of a woman spiraling into paranoia, or possibly a woman who'd seen something everyone else had missed. I found the psychological evaluation. The psychiatrist had diagnosed her with acute PTSD, complicated grief, and possible paranoid delusions. The last document was a missing persons report, filed by Jessica's sister, Sarah Mason. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number listed. A woman's voice answered, cautious and tired. Hello? Ms. Mason, my name is Dr. Anna Hayes. I'm calling from City General Hospital. I believe I have your niece, Lily, in my care. The sound that came through the phone was a sob. Lily. Oh my God. Is she alive? Is she okay? Where's Jessica? Where's my sister? My heart clenched. Lily is alive, but she's very sick. She came into my ER this morning. She's in our intensive care unit on a ventilator, but she's stable. As for Jessica, Lily was alone when she was found. I'm sorry, we don't know where your sister is. There was silence, then the sound of deep, wrenching sobs. Finally, Sarah's voice came back, shaky. I'm coming to Seattle. I'm getting on the next flight. Don't let anyone take her, Dr. Hayes. Don't let them put her in the system. She's family. I'll do everything I can, I promised. But Ms. Mason, when was the last time you heard from Jessica? Sarah took a shuddering breath. 14 months ago. She called me from a blocked number. She sounded crazy, Dr. Hayes. She was talking about conspiracies, about people following her, about how she had to protect Lily from them. I begged her to come stay with me, but she said she couldn't trust anyone. Did she ever tell you specifically who they were? Sarah W.A.M. hesitated. She mentioned names, military people. She kept saying something about the contract and the deal and how David had found out something he wasn't supposed to know. She said that's why they killed him. But Dr. Hayes, the Navy investigated. They said it was an accident. They said Jessica was sick. What do you think, Ms. Mason? I asked. There was a long pause. I think my sister was one of the smartest, most capable people I've ever known. I think she was trained to notice things. And I think that even if grief affected her judgment, that doesn't mean she was wrong about everything. Jessica wasn't crazy, Dr. Hayes. She was scared. And now she's gone. And her daughter nearly died alone on the streets. My pager went off, the PICU number flashing. Ms. Mason, I have to go. There's an emergency with Lily. Get here as fast as you can. I hung up and ran for the elevators. When I burst into Lily's room, Dr. Vale and 2 nurses were working frantically over the small body. The monitors were screaming alarms. She's thrown a clot, Emily said grimly. Pulmonary embolism. We need to get her to the OR now for an embolectomy, or we're going to lose her. I grabbed the end of the bed, helping to wheel it toward the door. As we rushed through the hallways, I made a silent promise to the unconscious girl. I won't let you die. Your mother was a warrior, and so are you. And I'm going to find out what really happened to your family, Lily. I swear it.